Hello everybody, my name is Megan. You're watching Miss Megan Knits. Links to everything I talk about will be in the description box below. I'm doing something a little differently today. Usually I write up a pretty detailed outline for all of my videos. Today, I've gathered all my materials in front of me and I'm gonna wing it. Well, this intro is scripted, but I am officially closing the laptop and we will see how this goes. The first thing I always talk about are my FOs, my finished objects. I have three for you today. Two crochet, no, they're all crochet. Three crochet finished objects, which is weird because I've been knitting so much lately, but I've finished 3 crochet things, so that's weird. Anywho, the first thing I'm going to talk about is something we've seen a couple of times. Is the Scrapadelic scarf. I believe it's by Elizabeth Pardue. I'll link the pattern with the actual person who wrote it in the description below. I finished it. So the teal and the gray and the brown are Lion Brand Feels Like Butter, and the red and the blue are Karen Simply Soft, and the dog is right there. Please don't make any noise. She's a good girl. This scarf is really cool. It uses up scraps. All you really need is enough for 1 row because you can do each row a different color because you start and end the row of half double crochets in each row. You don't carry colors up the side. So if you have enough for 1 row, you can just pop it in the scarf. And the ends end up being fringe. But like she does in the pattern, I did mine a little differently. But I added fringe to kind of bulk up the fringe because the fringe seemed a little bit spaced out and sparse for my liking. So I added some of a color I had a lot of. And so that's kind of how that looks. You can see my edges are a little wonky. I'm still fairly new to crocheting flat things. This is a half double crochet stitch that I was using, and I was having trouble figuring out like how to join so it wouldn't mess up. But I did figure it out. You can see this top bit is much more straight than this bottom bit. The fringe kind of hides it, but yeah, that's there. It's really long. I forgot that when I chain really tightly. You can see that this top edge is really tight compared to the bottom edge, which has more stretch, because I chain tightly. And so when I chained to my wingspan, I didn't account for the fact that once I started doing my half double crochets, it would be longer than that. So it's a really long scarf. I think I'm keeping this one for myself. I know I've said in past videos that I didn't know what to do with it, but I've been told it looks really good on me. The colors kind of match the hair and the complexion or something. I don't know, but I've been told it looks nice on me, so I think I'm going to keep it. The blog that this is from, I believe, is called Crochet in Color. I will link that as well. I used a G-hook from the Knit Picks Bright Crochet Hook set. Those are the crochet hooks I've been using lately. I really like them. Next finished object is this Mod Gingham dishcloth. I just kind of whipped this up in like 2 days because I was craving to crochet something, and I've been knitting so much on some of my whips that I wanted a little crochet back in my life. So I got some cotton mill ends. We've heard the story a million times of the time I bought 5 pounds of cotton mill ends all at once. It's cheap, but not the best idea. And then the white that I bought is like a chaser to try and make them look a little better because they're really bright colors. But I ended up with this gingham dishcloth. It was my first experience with what I believe is called tapestry crochet, where you carry different colors along the same row. It's not like Fair Isle knitting where you have a float on the back. You can see both sides. It's reversible. You actually carry them like you would if you were going to crochet in your ends, for example. But I found that the dishcloth was not too hard to do, but managing the 3 balls of yarn at once, especially when the dishy white was on a cone, was just, there was so many tangles and I was constantly fussing with it, and it's not going to be my go-to dishcloth pattern from now on, just because it's a little fussy for me. But it turned out great. I think if I did it again, I would use a smaller hook. I already went down 1/2 millimeter on my hook size from what the pattern suggested because I know I crochet pretty loose. Except for my chains, which are pretty tight. And it still feels kind of loose and airy for a dishcloth, so I feel like I would go down another 1/2 millimeter hook size and maybe add 6 more chains at the beginning to add another repeat of 2 squares to make it the right size once I narrow down because it seems like the right size now. The border it called for was a single crochet round and a backward single crochet round. I did not want to learn the backward single crochet just for this dishcloth. I was feeling impatient. I wanted it to be over. So I just did a round of single crochet and it looks fine. Forgot to mention this is the Mod Gingham dishcloth. I believe it's a Yarn Inspirations pattern and they recommended yarn to be peaches and cream. But I found it worked pretty well with these random mill ends that I got years ago. The moment you've all been waiting for. I promised you this last 2 weeks and I have it finished now. It is by Platypus. He actually looks like a platypus now. I am so happy with this platypus. This is definitely the most intensive amigurumi I've ever done so far. And I'm really excited to try another. So I used a really small hook and Aran weight yarn and he came out pretty big, like snuggleable size. He is from the book Cuddly Animals to Crochet, 28 Cute Toys to Make and Love by Lucia Forthman. And you can see there are all kinds of cute animals. I think the giraffe right here is what I'm gonna make next. I think. Don't hold me to that. I have so many good ideas right now. But anyway, platypus. I made him different colors. I made him Perry the Platypus colors from Phineas and Ferb because that's kind of the only platypus I grew up with. And I had this leftover teal already from a blanket I made. And you know how it goes. You have the leftover teal, you're like, yes, I'm using up scraps, but then I need to go buy a pound of yellow and 400 grams of brown because I don't have those colors. So did I really use up scraps or did I really add to my stash? Let's think about that now. But regardless, the teal and the sunflower, I believe this is actually called aqua. I've been calling it teal this whole time when I've been explaining it. I think it's actually called aqua because I just checked my Ravelry and that's what it said. So aqua and sunflower. The eyes are little scraps I had. The white is Red Heart Super Saver and the black is Barocco Love It just because that's what I had a little bit of on hand. And the tail is Nicole Studio Classic. It's actually the Nicole Studio Classic Plus. The only difference is the size of the skein. So this is a 400 gram skein. The regular Studio Classic is a 200 gram skein. This tail is super soft. I love working with this yarn when I knit with it because it works up super nice. And I love the finished result when I crochet with it because it is super soft. However, it splits and then it was dark, so it was hard to see where the splits were. So I could, fix them and scoop them up with my hook. It was just a nightmare. So probably not gonna crochet with this yarn anymore unless I'm doing a larger gauge project where I can more easily see my stitches, but working that tightly is just not, with the splitting, is not my cup of tea. The 1 pound, did I say Simply Soft? Maybe I didn't. It's 1 pound. The 1 pound is, splits a little because of the small hook, because I used a pretty small hook. I kept grabbing individual strands like a lot. I think that was because of my gauge and stuff, but it didn't split nearly as much as this did, so that's kind of an explanation. And no, it no longer looks suggestive. So cute. I'm gonna put him back here. There we go. He's looking over my shoulder. Those were my finished objects. Now I will proceed to my works in progress. So my first work in progress is probably the least exciting. I'm just gonna get it out of the way. Actually, yeah, it's probably the least exciting. I'm gonna talk about my Plarn, and I didn't bring the Plarn with me because it's really big now and I couldn't fit it all on camera anyway, and it would just be a bunch of rustling plastic bags as I try to jostle it all around so you can see how big it is. It's about yay wide and about yay tall. It's got a big row of Stop and Shop. It's got a gray area, and then it's got red and white, which are Marika Basket, Target, Petco. So yes, like everybody uses red and white. So I'm gonna try and continue the rest of it with all red and white. I'll see if I have enough bags. If not, I'll just add another stripe of another color. It's not a big deal. Before I keep going, for those of you who don't know, I crochet mats for the homeless out of plastic grocery bags. I do it with my church. If you want to know more about it, I have a video linking called All About Plarn. It's all about everything plastic bag yarn related, including how I make my mats, the pattern I make my mats, the hook I use, everything like that is all there. So I will link that video. Check it out if you're interested. Another work in progress is something that I have been keeping you updated on for a couple of weeks now, since the retreat actually. I started at the same time as I started that Scrapadelic scarf. I'm keeping it in this burlap bag I got from Christmas Tree Shop for $2 because it's cute. I'm keeping most of my stuff in here, but then I've been actually traveling with this sock. So the sock I'm actively working on, I have a smaller amount of materials in this little Ipsy bag, which turns out is the perfect size for a single sock in a 50-gram ball of yarn. I wanted to show you, this is the sock I'd been working on. It is a complete tube now. My marker's right here, so this is where it's gonna go. I have a 9-inch foot, so this is a 7-inch foot before I put in the heel, which will be 2 inches. And then I did a 7-inch leg and a 1-inch ribbed cuff, so that's an 8-inch total. And I still had a lot of yarn left over. Like, I had this much yarn left over. The yarn I'm using is, if I can find the tag, the Premier Wool Free Sock in the colorway Vegas Lights. I got it for my birthday, so I'm calling these my birthday retreat socks because I got them for my birthday and cast them on for a retreat. You can see I don't have a heel yet. I only have one set of needles in this size, and I needed to get some mindless knitting for an upcoming thing I was doing. So I cast on for the second sock before I did the heel of the first sock, and this first sock will just wait, and I'll do both heels around the same time. I've been talking about having a hard time finding a heel color. I did find a heel color at the Knit Picks yarn sale. Now granted, I know the wool-free sock is an acrylic, and I'm using a wool, or superwash wool heel yarn, but they're both washable and dryable, and I couldn't find an acrylic that I really liked. I looked at like 2 craft stores. I couldn't find one I wanted, so I went online and got this for like $2 at their yarn sale. This is Knit Picks Stroll Fingering in the colorway Pea Pod, and I just kind of want to hold it up next to the sock. I think it looks quite nice because there's some green in this sock, but not a ton of green, so this green won't be out of place. So that's in here. My notions case is in here. And then in my little Ipsy bag, which is what I stick in my purse, which is what I have around with me, I have my second sock. I made a lot of progress, apparently. I didn't realize how much progress I made until I remembered that I hadn't finished the first one when I podcasted last. So here's where I'm going to put my heel, this marker right here. And I'm just working on the leg. Same everything, because it's the pair of the sock. The needles I'm using are the Knitter's Pride Carbons DPNs. I don't know if I told you guys this story about needles I'd been using for socks, and they've been fitting being these needles, right? And I thought these were size 2 needles, which I had swatched with other size 2 needles and got a gauge of 8 stitches per inch, which is like the standard gauge for a lot of socks and fingering weight. And turns out these are not. These are 0.5 millimeter smaller. And I've been making socks that fit, so I didn't even notice. And then when I went to pick up the needles to start this sock, I realized my mistake, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I use the size 2 needles, which gets gauge, or do I use these needles, which I know make socks that fit me, and what do I do? So I just gotta remember to be more careful with my needle sizer next time and not just rely on what I remember the printed words once said. I'm pretty sure I told that story before, but you get to hear it again. And in this bag, I basically just have the sock. I had that stitch marker, the little safety pin stitch marker. Ooh, it's blowing out. Little safety pin stitch marker. I was using it as a progress keeper, and then now it's being used to tell me where my heel is, so I can measure from that point to determine how long my leg is. So I've got that going, and then I've got my little piggy tape measure with my... The only thing I don't like about this tape measure is that the ear is on the 0. Here we go. Sorry, I've got like 2 windows here, and then a window there, and then a window there, and the window behind me. It's like bright. But the 0 is on the ear, so when you try to measure it, the 0 is being covered, so you have to kind of rock the ear back and forth to try to figure out how you can get the measurement on. Sometimes I just measure from 1 and use it that way. But it's adorable. It's adorable. Retractable tape measures are my best friend. Most of my tape measures are just the plain tape kind, because those are the kind you can get for cheap on Amazon. But for Christmas, I asked for some retractable ones, so we'll see if I end up getting them. My other 2 whips. I needed some inspiration, and I have a boyfriend who is willing to wear hand knits. So one day, I sat him down at my kitchen table with Taco Bell. I sat in front of him with a notebook and said, I want to knit you stuff. What can I knit you? And he said, no, nothing, it's okay. And I said, no, tell me. So I learned that he doesn't own mittens. We live in New England, it gets cold here. And not super, super cold compared to some other places, but cold enough to need mittens. And he doesn't have any mittens. And I asked him, well, how do you shovel snow if you don't have mittens? And he said, I tough it out, which made me sad. So I am knitting him a pair of mittens, and I interviewed him. It was like an interrogation kind of about all of his preferences for mittens, what he wanted, what he didn't want. And so here's kind of what he said. He wanted convertible fingerless gloves with a closed thumb in medium thickness and orange and green. And he wanted them in the Hastings mitts pattern because I have a pair of Hastings mitts and I really like them. I wear them all the time, and he wanted to match, which I thought was adorable. Who am I to say I can't do that? Because of course I can do that. I can take the pattern and make alterations, and well, it took a lot of alterations, and he had to try it on like 12 times because I wanted to make sure everything fit before I moved on to the next step. But here is one of them. This is an HO because it's half finished. Ooh, my pinky got caught on a float. That's not good. I thought I had tacked down all the floats. Oh well, I guess I will fix it later. Ah, I'm still stuck. That doesn't make me look very good now, does it? Here it is. So basically what I decided to do, from here, the cuff, all the way up to before where the gloves start, is the Hastings Knits pattern by Tracy Miller. I worked all the way up to where the thumb was, and then worked to round 20, all according to her pattern. Then what I did is I separated for the fingers, and I learned how to do this from a blueprint class called Mittens and Gloves Galore with Marley Bird. And I learned a trick of where you purl the last round, so when the curling happens, it curls out instead of curling in, but the fingers are in stockinette. I had to redo the fingers. I used a stretchier bind off because I tend to bind off tightly. So I used a decreased bind off, but that put too much bulk at the fingers and made them like you lose your dexterity. So that wouldn't do. I picked it out and I redid it. I also made all the fingers the same length originally, and I actually had to make the pinky shorter because it was too tall for his pinky. He was losing pinky motion, so that wasn't good either. The flap, I also got the gist of from the Mittens and Gloves Galore class. I picked up stitches across the back half on round 20, the last colorwork round. And then I cast on another set of stitches to make the whole stitches of the mitten. And this flap I had to pull out and redo, I think, twice. But I got it. So I worked for half an inch with the rib on this side so it doesn't curl, and the plain on this side, and then pulled up a colorwork. Now I was planning to do just simple stripes like the thumb, but I wanted to keep the border on the sides, and the math didn't work out with the number of stitches I had. So I rushed to my graph paper and I drew like 5 sketches, and I texted Bear and I'm like, hey, which one of these do you like? And he picked this one with the thicker orange stripe in the middle and the green border on the edges. This is really easy. Once I set up the colorwork row, like vertical stripes, you just knit the stitch with whatever color you're using. So if it's an orange stitch, you knit it in orange. And if it's a green stitch, you knit it in green. So I wasn't like following the chart row for row. I just did a quick sketch so he could see what it looked like. And then for decreases, I decreased after 3 plain rounds, just because that was the number for his hand to make the right measurement. I decreased every other row until I had half of my original stitches. And then I decreased every row using the standard mitten decreases. You slip knit on one side and knit 2 together on the other side, and then come around the back and slip knit 2 together, and do that. The standard, if you've knit a pair of mittens before, that's what you do. And then I Kitchenered the top instead of doing a drawstring, because if I did the drawstring, I was afraid it would look too much like a triangle. I actually had to rip out and redo it because it looked too much like a triangle the first time. I didn't want it to look like a triangle, I wanted it to look like a mitten. Then I came back and did the thumb per the Hastings Fits instructions. I was going to have a little bit of trouble because the Mitts instructions just say to try it on and, you know, where in your thumb you should start your decreases. It doesn't say a measurement for each size. So I was afraid that I wasn't going to have him to try it on and I'd have to wait to finish it. It'd be a hassle. But then he just happened to come over this morning because situation happened and he had an hour to kill. So he came over and I had him try it on and it was perfect. So I closed it all up and it's all done now, except for apparently I have to tack down some ends by the pinky because apparently they still have longer floats than I would like. Other than that, we're done. So the next one, and I didn't do these in this order. The next one is up till here. And I did that because I knit the first one up till this point and then needed him to try it on and he wasn't going to come over for a while, so I knit the second one up to this point too. So now I've got to add all the fingers and the flap and everything. Tip of mine, instead of using scrap yarn or a stitch holder for holding your thumb stitches or your finger stitches as you're doing the gloves, I like to use just some cheap ribbon from the art supply store. I find that's really easy to snake your needle in and pick up the stitches without removing the ribbon. And also it's a nice smooth, clean, doesn't leave yarn bits behind in your work. It's just a nice way to do it. So that's my tip. It comes in all kinds of colors so you can find one that contrasts with your yarn. Back to my interview with my boyfriend. He also asked for a pair of socks. Basically I told him I could make him socks and he was like, really? Of course, I can. I knit. I do that. But anyway, so he requested a pair of socks that he could wear like with pajamas around the house that are thick and warm, had to be machine washable. Oh, I forgot to mention. For those gloves, the cuff was in US 6, the fingers were a US 7, and the colorwork was all a US 8. And I used Swish Worsted from Knit Picks in the shades Clementine and Jade. And you could see they were color flipped because that's how I did mine and he liked that, so that's how I'm doing it. These socks are also in Swish. These are in Swish DK, so I'm knitting him some DK socks. These are just basic socks. Cuff down, I did a 2-color heel stitch, heel flap. I did a 2-color cast on, so it's got kind of a stripe going like that. I'm past the gusset, I'm onto the foot. Just a simple sock right there. Well, I mean, it's got the heel flap all fancy, and then I'm going to add some stripes going towards the toe to make it like a gradient. Not really a gradient because it's between gray and red, but it make it kind of a fade. Fade is what I'm looking for. Anyway, this is Swish DK in the shades Serrano, which is the red, and Charcoal, which is the gray. It's beautiful. I really like this yarn. I like it for the mittens, I like it for the socks. It's soft, it's fun to work with. It wasn't super expensive because they were having their sale. For this sock, I'm mostly using techniques from the Sock Knitter's Handbook. This is where I'm getting my instructions for the heel flap, how many stitches to use for the heel flap, how many stitches to pick up from the sides, how many stitches to decrease for the gusset. All of that is in here. This book gives you everything about socks except a pattern to knit a specific sock. So if you're looking for someone who just wants, if you're someone who just wants to follow a pattern from start to finish, this book is not for you. But if you're someone who likes to kind of mix and match pieces of stuff, you want to get into designing socks, but you're not super sure where to start, this book offers so many helpful tips on how to create your own sock designs. So highly recommend it. I also wanted to talk about one of my favorite objects for knitting. It's knitting related, so I figured I'd sneak it in here. So daylight savings time is over. I believe it's over, not started. And it's dark here early. Like the sun sets at like 4:30 and then it's dark. And it's only going to keep getting darker as we get into December and everything. And it makes it very hard to knit. I have really good lighting in this room because I have a bunch of windows and we have 3 different overhead lights. One of them's on the wall, but 3 different lights. And one of them is a chandelier with those LED bright white bulbs in it, so it's really bright. But sometimes even then it casts weird shadows and it's hard to knit. I found in my house a desk lamp, and I'm going to bring it to you right now. Here it is. Just a little task lamp, nothing fancy, nothing over the top. There's a little button, it turns on, it turns off, that's all it does. But I set it up on the table, kind of facing me like this. I turn it on and I work underneath it. And it's really helpful, especially with those mitts when I was using the jade yarn, that really dark green. It's kind of hard to see the stitches and whether or not you've decreased, especially on the mitten flap. Or if you're picking up stitches is hard too. So this lamp has been a lifesaver. Highly recommend just getting a light source you can move. I've heard about hot lights, and I think I could really use one for where I live. Because they're supposedly the best kind of light with the best kind of light bulb that mimics daylight. But, you know, they're kind of pricey. And this, although it casts kind of a yellowish light and kind of some weird shadows, I can really move it, you know, and angle it and change it around to make it work for what I'm doing. It bends in 3 places, so I can tilt it around so the shadows aren't so bad. And it's lightweight and portable, so I can move it to wherever I'm sitting. I'm not going to link to it because I have no idea where I bought this or how long ago I bought this. So that has been it. I'm looking at about 30 minutes on the timer right now. Obviously, it's going to be a little less than that for you because I'm going to edit out some stuff. But it seems like that's a good length for a podcast type video. I am very excited for all of the yarny goodness coming my way at Christmas. There's a blueprint box that showed up at our house, and I don't know what's in it, but it's something for me, probably, so I'm excited. I hope this experiment with the no notes thing worked out okay. I'm sure I forgot stuff. I'm sure I did. But, you know, I'm trying to learn how to do this more freehand, less scripted, because I feel like I'm more natural when I'm just talking, as opposed to when I have to read off of notes and make sure I get everything, so that's kind of where we're at. Thank you so much for listening to me babble on. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in my next video, roughly 2 weeks from now, probably. Maybe sooner. I've been kicking around an idea that I might get out in between videos, but we'll see. Bye.